All right, let's do this. Hi, I'm with Sophie Barthes. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay, and you are the writer and director of The Pod Generation. And I've got to say this. I saw The Pod Generation at Sundance this year. And I will say that whenever someone asks me about Sundance, this year's Sundance, the only movie I remember is The Pod Generation. I mean, it's weird, but it shouldn't be weird. But it harkens back to what I love about science fiction. Science fiction is not just space and lasers and robots and stuff. It's about an in-depth look into humanity, and this movie really speaks to that in a way that's very relevant today. And so, can we just start off by let me ask? Oh, and I will say, this is one of those movies that I like because you watch it, you get people to watch it, and then you talk about it. And that's to me is what movies all about. So yeah, congratulations. I really responded to your movie.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, that's the beauty of science fiction, is like that it's a philosophical endeavor. You know, I love Brave New World. I love George Orwell. I love all the science fiction that had things to say about humanity, about dictatorships, about fascism, about, you know, and this sci-fi is about our relationship to capitalism and technology, and the idea is to raise all those questions. I don't bring all the answers because I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a politician or a doctor or a neuroscientist or a tech person. But if the movie can do what you just say, that you keep thinking about it and want to talk about those themes, I think I've done my job.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it poses a lot of questions. And I'll go back to Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Star Wars, even Soylent Green, some of these older science fiction stuff.
Yeah, I love them. Yeah, I saw adolescent. I remember I was very taken. I mean, that's the beauty of sci-fi, is like you can take any subject and be playful with it and create new rules. And so there's this deliciousness of creating a new world, but at the same time, it's completely about human nature. It's who we are.
Oops. Hey, can
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, go ahead and finish your thought. I got to do something.
Yeah. No, I think human nature hasn't changed that much. If you look at all what the Greek philosophers were saying 2,000 years, like Icarus and all the hubris that humanity has, all this is you find it, all this theme in science fiction. And if you take any big sci-fi movie, they're all very philosophical, but it's
very low
guised under, like the narrative or the storytelling. But yeah, it's a beautiful genre. I love it.
So give me just a basic summary of the Pod Generation.
Oh, so it's about a couple in New York in the near future. And the wife, Rachel, hasn't told her husband that she put them on a wait list to have a baby in an artificial womb. And when the call comes in and they have a spot, now she has to break the news. But the complication is that he's a botanist and he's very much into everything that's very natural. So you can imagine that conversation is not going to go that well. So that's the premise. And then we follow this couple as they decide to go for this technology and how they bond differently to this pod and how it creates all this strange dynamic and scenario in their couple in their journey to parenthood.
All right. And so to me, one of the overarching themes of the Pod Generation is the idea of synthetic versus natural. I think there's this attempt in society today to try to replace everything that's natural with science. And I think the message I got from the film was basically, just because we can do these things, should we do these things?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, we've seen it. I wrote this way before ChatGPT came into existence, but when the film was actually premiering at Sundance, it's the week that ChatGPT was released. And it's exactly the same question that I had, that, Ezra Klein, who's having a podcast about artificial intelligence, had, is why are we doing these things? And his answer was like, because we can. And that's what they did with the atomic bomb. Like, we as human beings are wired to innovate and create. That's how we are. And then we go back to the Greek mythology, where is it always a good idea to have hubris? For the Greeks, it was the biggest offense you could do to the gods, because it means you had omnipotence and you wanted to be a godlike figure. And so there's this thing with science that we can't stop progress as human beings, and we need it, and it's wonderful. But there's also consequences to progress when it's not regulated and thought in terms of ethical and philosophical implication. And that's what the artificial womb, this pod, is about. It could be an allegory. It doesn't even have to be an artificial womb. It's just the relationship we have to this egg is the relationship we have to technology as human beings. We cannot stop inventing those things, but what are they going to do to us? And I think the biggest question I wanted to raise is, what are we ready to give from ourselves as human beings for convenience? And that's what we keep seeing in the tech today. Like, are we ready? Like, it started with GPS. We gave our sense of orientation to the machine, right? And it's wonderful because you're driving a car and the GPS is telling you where to go. But in the process, we've lost a feature. A lot of people are completely unable to orient themselves today. And this was a feature we developed during millions of years of evolution. That's gone. And that's just a little detail, maybe, but maybe it's not. Maybe we do need certain things that we're giving away very quickly, just because a few people in the Silicon Valley are deciding, this should be the future of humanity. So I wanted to raise all those questions. And now that we sit with ChatGPT, it's like, do we want really all the essays to be written, or the books? And that's why there's a strike in Hollywood right now. It's like, do we want screenplays to be written by the machine? Do we want to give away all this creativity that we have as human beings? And then once you start to give it away for a few generations, is it something that is reversible, or you've given away this part of our brain and then we can't get it back? It's given to the technology. So for me, they're all fascinating questions, and I don't have the answers again, but I think it's interesting to debate, have a healthy debate about them.
Yeah. One thing that I thought about, and I've been thinking about for a very long time, is the idea that maybe the human body is perfect the way it is, and that we don't need to necessarily intervene all the times to declare something as bad and then intervene, get rid of all the bacteria, get rid of all the viruses and diseases. And maybe there's this symbiotic relationship we have with nature that we just shouldn't be interfering with.
Of course. I mean, the biggest influence for me philosophically is Spinoza. He's a philosopher from the 17th century. And he said that it was very visionary to say that at that time, that the more we think we can control nature, the more nature reminds us that it's actually controlling us. And it's exactly what's happening with climate change. We commodified nature. We thought we were the masters of nature and we could do whatever we wanted. And suddenly nature is just showing us that it doesn't care that much. Nature is following its course and doing its thing. And we're just like a little speck of dust in the size of evolution. We're nothing as human beings. We represent really nothing. But we have this hubris. We think we can control it. We can commodify it. We're superior to it. But also, I think through the process of evolution, we don't understand fully how we came to be these creatures that are, our bodies are functioning in a quite incredibly perfect way. Do we need to go and problem solve everything, And there's always a reason behind, which is there's a capital reason. There's capitalism behind that is trying to monetize the body, or monetize the womb, or monetize reproduction, or so I'm not anti-progress, because of course you want to find the cure for cancer, and progress is wonderful in a certain way, but it's also, we're creating a lot of problems for ourselves, like that's what's happening with artificial intelligence. Suddenly it's the Pandora box. We've opened that box, all these things are going to come out, and there's always the hope at the end that things are going to turn all right. But did we need to open that box or not? That's the big question.
Yeah. I mean, along with capitalism, I think the problem is also power and control, the nature of man wanting to, have dominion over not only the land, the environment, but over people, which is what I found interesting with the AI therapist that the couple meets with. That, this AI therapist lacks the one thing that a therapist needs, and that's empathy. And it feels like it was more about control, about manipulating people, than it was about really trying to find mental health.
For sure. I mean, they've studied it when I was writing, actually. They had studied at Stanford, I think, to test the first artificial intelligence therapist. And the students were saying they felt much more comfortable with artificial therapists because they didn't feel judged by a human being, which is kind of, it's very scary because, yes, if you have a artificial therapy, for sure there's going to be a company behind and an algorithm. And that's why I was trying to do it in a satirical tone in the film. But when the therapists say, oh, we don't analyze dreams are useless. When dreams are the material that the subconscious is producing to tell you something about your life and the development of your soul and where you're going. So just by making everything rational and, fall into the format of an algorithm, of course, you're losing part of humanity, which is there's a huge part of ourselves that is unexplainable, which is our soul. We don't understand, we don't have that power to fully understand humanity and human beings and how complex we are. And so giving that away to a machine is, it's completely absurd for me. But I can see going there for sure. There's going to be artificial therapists.
All right. So let me ask you, I want to talk about the fact that it is science fiction. And I'm under this ongoing assumption that studios really don't like science fiction in this sense, and that, that maybe the audiences won't get it. How did you get the film made?
Well, that was really hard to get made because in the US, all the studios say no. They couldn't understand the dialectic nature of the script, and they wanted to know exactly what was the message. I can't, for me, films that are interesting are more raising questions and make you think than giving you, pre-made answers to humanity's problem. So finally, we had to make it in Europe, and Emilia Clarke was very instrumental in helping the film getting financed. She was so enthusiastic, and she was really a champion of the project because she fell in love with the script. And, she really pushed for the film to be made. But it's a small independent film. It's not a studio film. And yeah, it was interesting. The conversations were very interesting when we were trying to get it made. Like some people were like trying to figure out if we're criticizing surrogacy or not criticizing surrogacy. And I was like, well, it has nothing to do with surrogacy. I'm talking about, our love, our obsession with technology. And like, if you push that to all the possible outlets, you can imagine that one day the womb is going to be externalized. And what does it mean for women? Are we losing that power to give birth, or are we becoming more powerful? And they wanted me to give an answer, and I don't have the answer. I don't know. I know these things are going to exist, and I just know that once they're there on the market, we would have never thought about them before or regulate them, and then we're going to scramble to try to find solutions of what we should be doing with it. And that's what we do every time. I mean, that's exactly what's happening with artificial intelligence. We had all these issues with, like Instagram and TikTok being very disruptive for democracy or for teenagers, and we didn't almost do anything about it. There's no regulation about it. And then we're doing the same thing with artificial intelligence. We're only going to regulate once we hit a wall. And that's what happens in America. While other countries and governments are regulating much earlier. Like, for instance, Europe is regulating artificial intelligence already. Mm-hmm. And here the debate always comes with pain, I feel, in America. You have to hit the wall to then start talking about the things. And I don't know why. I mean, it's like this because there's too much.
Things have to get worse before they get better.
Yeah, there's too much money. And some people have too much to lose if this technology is not developed fast enough. And it's always the same story, you feel. So I don't know. As filmmakers, all we can do is bring awareness and at least have people then decide, is that the life you would like to have? Is that... but it's a satire. It doesn't take itself that seriously. It's just like, I'm not trying to lecture the audience. I just want him to have fun and think about those ideas in a playful way.
So what were some of the obstacles you had to overcome to ultimately get the project greenlit?
Well, we had to, make it as cheap as possible, and it was difficult because there's some VFX involved. Like the eye is a very beautiful. We had a lot of ambition visually, so then we had to be creative and trying to make it all fit in what we could raise. But this is the hurdle that every filmmaker has. There's never enough money. There's never enough time, and so you work with this and you try to make the best film you can with what is given to you. And I think that's a healthy exercise. We have to be responsible as filmmakers, and it's very costly as an endeavor. So you just have to try to do it the best you can with what's given to you. And I feel visually I'm very happy with the film, how we're able, with the means we had, we're able to really create a world and build this kind of future that is very seductive, and you just want to live in that world. That's the whole, seducere in Latin is taking people away from the right path. And I think that's what the technology is doing in the film. It's so desirable, it's so seductive, it's so beautiful. You want to have it, but is this something you should want to have it? There's a fetish almost around those pods. You want to touch them, so we put a lot of thought into like how we should design this world and how appealing it should be. And also I think the future is going to blur probably the line between the digital and the organic, so you're not sure anymore if it's a machine or if it's a living thing. So that's why we came with this idea of the eye for the therapist, where it's very troubling that the eye is blinking and it's moist and it feels like a real eye, but it's a machine talking to you. And that creates something in the brain because we're wired to respond to the beauty in natural things. That's how our brain has evolved. So of course, that makes your defense mechanism fall because you see something that is organic, but in reality it's not organic. So that's why maybe you open up to that eye when you shouldn't, because it's just a machine. So we're playing with all those concepts and having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk about the production values of the film is interesting to me because it's amazing. The VFX is incredible, but at the same time, the costumes, the locations, the sets. Can you talk a little bit about, just what was that struggle to get that exact look you were looking for?
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned from my previous films is if you don't have much money, you don't want to build sets. You want to find practical locations. And so we did a lot of location scouts. We shot in Belgium, and it's supposed to be New York. So imagine that's a bit of a stretch. But because it was the future, we got away with the beauty of the architecture in Belgium is very eclectic. So you could find brutalist architecture. There's buildings that are so interesting, like the Womb Center building had the windows, and this space was going to be demolished, but WeWork, I think, took it over, and it's a wonderful piece of architecture. And the windows look like the womb, the artificial womb. So we just spent a lot of time trying to find places that we wouldn't have to build. The Womb Center is also like a spa that we found that had all these wonderful features that look futuristic. And of course, there's a lot of interior design that we added to make the film coherent visually, but a lot is just like the luck and the amount of work that the teams in Belgium put to find those very special locations. And then, just being creative with what you have, like the pods. We couldn't see the baby that many times because every time you look at the pod, it's a VFX. So you had to be very economical and storyboard everything. And just make sure that story-wise, you only needed to look inside this pod a few times. It would have been wonderful that you could constantly see this fetus growing, but it would be so expensive. We couldn't. So in a way, it's a bit like when you work as a filmmaker in a dictatorship, when you have to be, like Iranian filmmakers have to be so resourceful because they have a dictatorship telling them you can't talk about this and this and this, and they find a way to make very creative films. And I think here, in our case, it's the dictatorship of money. Like you never have enough money, and you try to make the most ambitious and beautiful film with what you have. And I think sometimes it's just better. It pushes you to be more creative in a way.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. It's like, why are the big studios pumping so much money into these movies? And it feels like they've become lazy, while independent filmmakers, they have these restrictions, these confinements that they have to work through. And oftentimes that's the better result.
Yeah, I could make 100 Marvel movies with this budget. But yeah, it's different products. I think it's a different
Yeah.
approach.
So last realm I want to get into, but was Roadside Vertical on board before Sundance, or did they come in after Sundance? And the reason I ask is I'm kind of curious. You went to Sundance, and I'm kind of curious what that journey was afterwards.
No, we had pre-sold, so we had MK2 in France, and they did all the foreign sales at IFM like the year before. So the film was pre-sold everywhere. It's, I think, Universal and Lionsgate got it for most of the world. But I think like the strategy was to keep the US open and just sell it at Sundance, and hoping that we would get into Sundance. But I had I went to the Sundance lab, and my first film was at Sundance, so I had a big hope that it would be at Sundance, or otherwise it would have been Toronto probably. But I think it was a strategy to keep America available, and then we were very lucky that Roadside and Vertical fell in love with the film, and it was sold. I mean, it started all at Sundance, unofficially, but it was all this negotiation process. So the deal took a little bit of time to be negotiated, but it was sold at Sundance basically. But it was a tough year, I think, because I think a lot of great documentaries didn't get distribution. And for the US, the main thing that you want as a filmmaker is to be in theaters. And now, I mean, you know how hard it is for independent films to actually be in a theater. Like most of the films at Sundance went straight to streamer. Like the biggest sale at Sundance, I think, Fair Play was this 20 million Netflix acquisition, and it's going straight to streamer. It's not going to go in theaters. So for a filmmaker, when you make a film like this, you really want to have the theatrical distribution, so people see all the aesthetic work, all the efforts you put for this to be seen on a big screen, as least is rewarded by distributors that like Roadside and Vertical. They're doing an incredible job to try to continue to distribute films in this climate, and it's getting harder and harder every year to just exist compared to all those blockbusters. And so I'm very grateful that they picked the movie, believed in the movie, and said this movie has to be seen on a big screen.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. We've talked to a couple movie theater owners, and they're kind of getting tired of what Hollywood is giving them. And the thing about a local theater owner is they understand their audience, they understand their community, and I'm hoping that a film like this is one that will just resonate with, find its way in the back door, so to speak, of the movie chains.
Yeah, I hope so. I think maybe it will be like the 70s at one point, that people will be so tired with the same formula that, there's the pendulum swings and there are more independent films that are shown in theaters, because it's so sad to lose that as a collective experience. Of course, we can all watch movies on our screens at home, but to laugh with someone that you don't know in a theater is such a wonderful experience. And to see those close-ups on a giant screen, it changes completely your perception of a film. And the sound also, like this movie got the Dolby Atmos prize at Sundance, so we got we're able for such a small film to mix the film in Atmos, which is amazing. You have the sound all over you, like a big Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And so this, you want the audience to experience that in a theater,
Yeah.
So hopefully, I'm hopeful that it cycles, and probably people will go back to see movies, but the industry just had to make an effort to be more supportive of independent filmmaking, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. When I saw the Pod Generation out of Sundance, I knew it was going to be a while before we got a chance to see it. And I told my co-host, Chris, you need to see this movie. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, I trust you. He saw it. And now we're trying to create, at least within our circles, this grassroots movement to get this movie seen. So fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's an audience for science fiction, for thoughtful science fiction, and I have to believe that this is one of them.
Yeah, I remember The Lobster and all those weird little films that it's great, it's different, and I just hope people connect with it. But you never know. It's such a weird climate right now, with the strike and all this. and then the huge movies like you know, you have Barbie, and then you're trying to exist. So
Yeah,
it's complicated, but I'm hopeful that you know, independent film is gonna probably find it a way to still exist, and there'll still be some great movies in theaters.
I sure hope so. All right, well, thank you so much. So
Thank you.
the Pod Generation is coming to theaters. I believe it's this weekend,
Yep.
August 11th. Okay, and then please go out and see this movie. Bring friends, go to coffee afterwards, and then talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.